Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast, fantasy football for the average Joe. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. Frankie, how the hell are you, my man?
Doing great, baby. Let's go. We are a week out from real NFL fucking football that counts, that means something. The blood, sweat, and tears. They mean
Meaningful
something.
Football is nearly upon us. So happy, man. Hey, this is our last preparation podcast. We may throw a mock draft out later this week. We'll see. I hope we can. But otherwise, as far as content goes, this is it, man. This is it, baby. We need to get everybody ready. What do you think? We're going to talk a little bit today about a few things. I like where we're going here. We're going to be planting our flags. We're going to be, just saying who we love, who are our champions. Today's episode is Trial by Combat, Frankie and Johnny's champions. So we've each picked some champions we're going to talk about. It's going to be great, man. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. I'm ready to have my champions dominate this year. So those of you who haven't drafted yet and preparing to draft, get ready. It's going to be one hell of a ride.
Are you ready for your drafts?
I'm so ready. I had one draft already, John. And I'll tell you what.
How'd you do?
I felt really good about it. Of course, everybody's going to say that. I did, just to kind of give everybody a glimpse into it. I got sixth overall in a sixth overall pick in a 12-man full PPR league. And just to give you a snippet of ideas, I have on my team Dak Prescott, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb. I also have Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf, Zeke, and Chris Godwin, just to name a few. So I feel like it's a really solid, well-rounded team, and it's going to be interesting.
Solid draft. All right. I like that, man. Yeah, send in your draft picks to us, guys. Send in your teams. Let us know. We can grade them for you. We can give you some ideas of how you did or what you could have done differently, or some possible trades and things that you can make in the future, All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you so much for your support on social media and on YouTube. Please, the ticker down at the bottom, there it is. Please follow us and subscribe to us and share us. Do all of that. Facebook, Instagram, now on YouTube. Watch the videos. We do specific things for videos to make it fun for everybody with some funny movie clips and different stuff. Frankly Fantasy Football, or on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. Frankie, we got some questions that came in here. Let's do a few Just the Tips.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Just the tips?
All right, let's put in just the tip here. So here we've got a question that came in from Instagram. Our live draft is this weekend, and 2 of the 12 guys will be remote. How do you guys handle drafting remote in a live draft? Well, it's funny that this question came in. That's perfect because we actually have the same scenario in our draft this weekend. I found a nice little clip that really sums it up, though.
You having supper with your disciples? What's the big occasion?
We're drafting teams for our fantasy football league. And if one guy isn't there, it screws it all up for everybody. Like last time, Paul was on his speakerphone, and we were like, Paul, you're up. And he'd be like, I'm what? And we'd say, you're up. And he'd be like, oh, okay, I'm Randy Moss. And we'd say, Thomas picked Randy Moss. He's off the board. And he'd say, what? It just really sucked.
That's so good.
And Paul was like, what? How many times have we had that in football live drafts where there's a guy on the phone and, all right, who's been taken?
Yep.
It's a fucking nightmare. As a commissioner, I hate that. So I'll go ahead and take this one, Frankie, as a commissioner who's going to be dealing with this same exact scenario this Sunday when we draft. So really what I have found to be the best thing to do with this, guys, we use Sleeper. I know we talk about it all the time. I've tried every single platform for fantasy football. Sleeper is the best in my opinion. It just is. It's the most comprehensive. It gives you the most options as a commissioner. One thing I love is their online drafting. It's so simple on your phone to do with the app. So really what I do is either the commissioner or I like to drink a lot and have a good time at my drafts. What? So I typically, a little bit. You've been to a few, huh? Yeah. So I like to designate somebody who can actually enter the players in real time. So the draft is going online as well. So that way you don't have to have somebody call in who was taken, who wasn't. You don't have to name the last 5 picks. The people that are drafting remote can watch it on their phone and see real time who's drafting who. So when it's their turn, they can push the button. It's right in. It's a piece of cake. If you have to Zoom, if you don't have those capabilities, I recommend like zooming in if you can, do a Zoom or a Teams call, video call. Face the screen right at the board so they can see the board, so they can see, who's been taken. You don't want to go through that bullshit of having to name players. And I want Randy Moss. Randy Moss Thomas took Randy Moss. You don't want to go through that bullshit, man. So good luck to you this weekend with your drafts. Frankie, we had another question come in here for Just the Tips. Holly Kelsey brought this one in. Shout out to Holly. She's one of our biggest fans. Love you, Holly. She's got an actual start-sit question. She just did her draft. Breece Hall versus the Ravens or Chase Edmonds versus the Patriots. Frankie, what are your thoughts on that, man?
Wow, that is really tough. Holly, great question. Happy to address it. This one is going to be difficult. I say that because Breece Hall was just named RB1 officially in the depth chart. So is Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds is also at home playing against New England Patriots. It's tough defense. Well, it gets worse. Breece Hall is also at home playing against the Ravens defense. It's not any better. So for me, Johnny, I'm looking at this in 2 different ways. One being who's going to get a lion's share of the load. And number 2, they're both new faces in new places. We've talked about them. And so it's going to be very difficult for us before even week 1 starts to understand kind of what this looks like, because the reality of the situation is their backups are very, very good as well. You have Michael Carter Jr. with Breece Hall. You also have Raheem Mostert. I would consider Raheem Mostert really not even a backup. So the difference for me, John, is when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it from a potential game script. And so for me, I would lean more towards now just week 1, based on the defense that they're playing, based on potential game script. I'm leaning more towards a Chase Edmonds. The reason being is because it's a little bit higher of a floor right out of the gate. You know what you're going to be able to get from a Chase Edmonds. You know that he's more of the receiving back. You know that the league that she's playing in, for those who are listening, those who are viewing, she plays in a full PPR league. So for that and for all of those different things combined, I would lean more towards that of a Chase Edmonds. Now, Johnny, if Breece Hall wasn't playing that of the Ravens, if Breece Hall was playing damn near any other team outside of maybe 4 or 5 others, I would probably say Breece Hall. I'm willing to take a chance on him week 1 and say, hey, line him up, start him. His production value from college was insane, right? I would probably lean that way. But that's not the case for week 1. So for me, Johnny, with all of those things that I just said, I'm going to go with my gut and lean a little bit more towards Chase Edmonds. What do you think on that, man?
Yeah, it is a really tough call. I mean, and everybody's going to have these decisions. When you're drafting these running backs round 4, 5, and 6, there's a lot of guys that it is going to be based on matchup. It's not just a slam dunk. Well, I drafted him in the 4th round, I have to start him. It's not the case. It's not the case at all. In a vacuum, yes, I'm putting out Breece Hall. No question. However, exactly what you said is right. That's a really unfortunate week 1 opponent for Breece Hall to see what he looks like. The issue with Breece Hall is that he may play very well, but he may only play much in the first half. This team's going to be down quite a bit. They're going to be playing from behind, which lends to me more of a Michael Carter Jr. game, at least in the second half. They're going to have him in on passing downs. They're going to be down. Miami has a much better chance. They're probably going to be down, but a much better chance of being competitive in this game. And if they are down in this game against the Patriots, which is also a great defense, you're going to have your pass-catching running back in there, your 3-down back, and that's Chase Edmonds. So in a PPR, on a team that's probably going to be down or trying to stay competitive or in the 2-minute offense quite a bit, I'm going with Chase Edmonds on that one too. It's really, really close, but I think the PPR with his pass-catching out of the backfield, I think it gives him a better floor. But Breece Hall, that son of a bitch could break off a 50-yard touchdown in the first quarter. Who knows? And we'd look stupid at that point. But if you're looking at everything as a whole, trying to put all the pieces together and what are the variables, I'm going with Chase Edmonds here. So hopefully, Holly, that's good enough. That's a tough decision, and that's really unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate that's your week 1 decision you have to make. But the good news is you've got Breece Hall and Chase Edmonds all season long. So that's a good decision to have to make. But with those two, you're going to be making this choice quite a bit. It's going to be all about the matchup. But yeah, send your questions in again. We'd love to do the same thing with you next week, and maybe we'll have an easier answer for you. So thanks, Holly. Appreciate it. All right, man, let's check out and see what's going on in the news here.
Absolutely lost.
News and notes.
Thank you to Anthony Sestone for our news and notes soundbite. Love that, brother. All right, we are getting down. Today is the deadline, August 30th. As we're recording this, is the deadline for getting down to roster cuts. Final roster cuts here, down to the 53-man rosters. Had some guys being cut here. The Bills released tight end O.J. Howard. The Chiefs release wide receiver Josh Gordon. Didn't have very long in Kansas City, did he? Josh Gordon, poor guy. The Colts have released Philip Lindsay. Philip Lindsay will be signed somewhere. He will be a backup somewhere. So he could have, based on injury with other teams, he could be fantasy relevant on the waiver wire, mid-season. Pay attention to him. Dolphins released Sony Michel. That's interesting. He was slated as the number 3 right now. And what this tells me about Sony Michel and about the Dolphins' backfield, it's nice to see these backfields start to solidify a little bit. Now we're getting some answers, which is great. What this tells me is they're cutting Sony Michel. That means Raheem Mostert's healthy. That means he looks good. He's looked good in the preseason, so that's a good sign. They're going to roll with Chase Edmonds as the 1, Raheem Mostert as the 2. I see it more of a kind of a 1A, 1B situation. I think, Edmonds will be out there for most of the time, but they're definitely going to work in Raheem Mostert, which his efficiency could go way up. He's going to have fresh opportunity in there. His opportunity to hit a home run on any play could be huge, So Sony Michel will get signed. There's no question. There'll be a team, could be the Ravens, could be anybody that's going to be looking at Sony Michel. Texans release running back Marlon Mack. We got some more backfield solidifying here. Yeah, I know you like this
means,
one,
baby.
That's right, man. Dameon Pierce. They haven't named him the RB1 yet, the starter. They're going to. He's going to start.
He's the guy.
Yeah, now they've released Marlon Mack. You've got Dameon Pierce. Who else is he competing with in that backfield in Houston?
So right now it's Rex Burkhead, and so it's going to be Dameon.
I'm sorry, who is it, Frankie?
It's Sex Burkhead, Sexy Rexy.
There you go.
And so yeah, he's gonna be competing with him. It's not gonna be competition. He's gonna be the pass catching kind of guy, very very much so that type of role. And it's gonna be Dameon Pierce's backfield, man.
Yep. No, you love him. You're gonna be shouting Dameon Pierce all season long, man. All right, Kenyon Drake, after being released by the Raiders. He's visiting the Ravens now, and he is expected to sign with the Ravens because Gus Edwards still on the PUP list. He is recovering from an ACL surgery last year, kept him out all season, and J.K. Dobbins is questionable for Week 1. He had an ACL tear last year as well, and he's questionable at this point. We're not sure if he's going to be starting. What do you do right now with this Ravens backfield? I mean, J.K. Dobbins is round 4, round 5? Yeah. He's in that running back dead zone. In fact, he's at the top of that tier in that running back dead zone. Are you touching him at all?
No, and the reason being, and guys, if you do, it's not to say that doesn't pan out mid-season, but right now, for the way I'm constructing my teams, he's off my board. Actually, all of the running backs for the Ravens are off my board. They had drafted, who was it? John Tyler Batty in the 6th round out of Missouri. They also signed Mike Davis. So, we've seen Mike Davis perform very well in Carolina. Really had kind of a down year at Atlanta last year. Really didn't perform up to any of the standards that even we had and much of the other national experts had as well. So, John, you layer that on with Gus Edwards potentially coming back and it not going to be right away. Then J.K. is not going to be right away. And now Kenyon Drake is visiting. Man, I'm staying so far away from this offense from the running back perspective. It's not my vibe.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way. That the unfortunate part of this is that the Ravens have such a high volume rushing attack.
Crazy high volume.
They run the ball more than any other team in the NFL. So it's going to be weird. You do want a piece of that. But my advice to this, and you can't just pass on Dobbins completely. If he falls to you late in the round 4, early round 5, you can take him. He is going to have value. We're not sure exactly when he's going to be on the field, but if you are taking any of these running backs from the Ravens, just take more running backs. You're just going to have extra guys. If you're taking him in round 4, come back in round 5, and you're going to have to do it again because you need options because we don't know exactly when he's going to start.
So, John, real quick on that, do you think that elevates Lamar Jackson a bit? And it's not from a normal capacity, right? And it's not from a normal thought process like, hey, you have a great running back. Now you're going to be able to spread the field. It's going to put less pressure on you. I'm talking about from the rushing side of things. Did you think that we could see the old Lamar Jackson, who's not injured, who's right now fighting for that additional contract, could this bolster him a bit?
I think it does. I think he's going to run his ass off. He's going to prove that he wants to be the highest paid quarterback of all time. I mean, that's just the bottom line. They haven't signed it yet, and they haven't put the deal forth yet. So he's going to be playing out of his goddamn mind. And what this means is that they're going to have 3 guys running the ball constantly. Yeah. I mean, it's just going to be a carousel of players. It's going to be really difficult for fantasy football, but for real football, he's going to have fresh legs in there on every play. So they're not going to feature a specific person, which is good. They're going to run their offense. Lamar's going to have a lot of planned rushing, plays for him. So, yeah, I think it does boost him, definitely.
So shout out to that, by the way, to the Real Housewives of Fantasy Football League, who just hosted a draft over here this past weekend. My wife, actually, Casey Laurie, ended up drafting Lamar, and so she was pretty down. And I told her, "Hey, you better be excited as hell because I think he's going to turn loose." And she got him for cheap. So shout out to Alyssa Palucci for being a great commissioner and getting the Real Housewives of Fantasy Football up and rocking for a second year.
That's right, man. I love seeing that. You got to love having a women's league in fantasy football. You know, we're going to do an episode on that. You know what? I promise this. I swear this. We're going to have some of the Real Housewives of Fantasy Football on the podcast, and we'll do a women in fantasy football episode.
Done.
I love it. We need more women in fantasy football for sure. All right, next item on the news here. Panthers have acquired Laviska Shenault from the Jaguars. That's interesting. Laviska really wasn't getting drafted. I think moving him over to the Panthers makes it kind of interesting with Robbie Anderson on the outside and DJ Moore. Laviska would be probably more of a slot guy for Baker Mayfield in that offense. Interesting. Not a guy I'm jumping on. Obviously, he's missed camp. He has zero rapport at all with Baker. But could be interesting, halfway through the season here, especially as injuries pop up. So keep an eye on that in the waiver wires. Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, both running backs, the 1 and the 2 for the Los Angeles Rams, both back at practice this week. They've been dealing with some soft tissue issues. They're both back at practice. That's a great sign. I do think, touching on this backfield just a little bit, Cam Akers is getting drafted very high. I think he's maybe a third-round guy, something like that.
Yeah.
Henderson is much later, and I don't care which guy's which. I'm taking the later guy. I want the value guy. I do think this is going to be very much a 50-50 split. I don't think it's all Akers backfield, which scares me off of Cam Akers. I'm not drafting him at all in any of my leagues, but I will take a shot on Henderson late in the draft to be able to get that value for him. What do you think about this backfield?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be 50-50, John. I could see it being more like a 70-30 with Cam Akers kind of leading the charge. But to your point, he's had troubles staying healthy, and so has Henderson. But when Henderson has been in, he's been dynamic. And so I agree full-heartedly with you. I mean, Cam Akers is completely off my board. I hope he does well. I hope he eats, just don't eat at my table, right? But I will definitely take Henderson because of the value you can get for him. And so I really like that call out. Yeah, for sure.
I like that. Well, I think we're going to find out later in this episode who is eating at your table. Is that right, Frank?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. All right, some really scary news that came out. This has been all over the news in the past 2 days here. Washington Commanders rookie running back Brian Robinson Jr. was shot multiple times in an attempted carjacking, completely random robbery, but he was shot at least twice, once in the leg and another in the glute. He's a third-round draft pick out of Alabama. He was taking this job in the preseason.
Yeah.
There were reports that we'd talked about already of Antonio Gibson being on special teams and returning punts, and Brian Robinson probably taking this job as the RB1. his surgery. He had surgery on Monday. The surgery went well. He's been released from the hospital. He is back at the facility. Not really a timetable on him. They say he should play at some point this season, but a couple of gunshot wounds to the legs, those are his wheels, man. He's a running back. That's tough. That's really tough. So his draft capital is going to drop. We're not sure when he is going to play. What do you do now? I mean, we've taken basically Antonio Gibson off of our board. Is he back as the RB1? Should he be drafted back in that 4th round in that dead zone? What do you think with this backfield now, Frank?
I think he definitely is going to be drafted top of that dead zone, right where J.K. Dobbins is going to be. And the reason being is because Brian Robinson, I mean, initial reports came out, it's going to be a few weeks. Now it's looking like it could be anywhere from a few weeks to mid-season. And guys, when thinking about that type of injury, and it's super unfortunate and completely uncalled for and absolutely ridiculous, but it's going to take a minute, right? Because you got to go through PT, then you're out of shape because you're not running. And so now you got to get back into football shape. And it just takes some time. So John, from a fantasy perspective, I think it does one of two things. I think you can actually get Brian Robinson now for good value, as terrible as that sounds, but just again, thinking fantasy wise, he'll drop. So you can get him for good value. And I think once he comes back, he's going to be ready to rock and roll. And I really do believe that. I mean, he's a young guy. He's still got a lot of tread on the tires, and I think he'll be ready to prove that. But also, additionally, I think that definitely makes Antonio Gibson immediately relevant, and it gives the Antonio Gibson a second chance. And very rarely do we see in the NFL somebody get a true second chance, and it's because of something that was completely out of his control. So, I think, McKissick is still there. Obviously, we talked about him, but the Commanders just released Jarrett Patterson. So it is truly Gibson and McKissick, unless they do something crazy and pick up, a Phillip Lindsay or a Marlon Mack or somebody like that.
Sony Michel.
Sony Michel, something along those lines. But as of right now, today, this moment, it absolutely revitalizes that fantasy value for Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, man, it's been a roller coaster ride for Antonio Gibson this offseason.
Crazy.
So crazy. Speaking of roller coaster rides, let's jump on the tracks here with Jimmy G. Jimmy Hansen.
What?
This boggles my mind, and I don't love it. I'm not going to lie. Jimmy G retained and re-signed by the San Francisco 49ers as their backup. $6.5 million fully guaranteed, up to $15 million if he ends up playing, if he ends up performing, with bonuses in there. There's also a no trade clause. He's a 49er this year. He's going to be the backup. Yeah, that's just the way it is. I don't love this for Trey Lance.
Oh.
I don't. Trey Lance is my dude this year. And I think we may end up talking about him later on, Frank. But Trey Lance is my dude. And the last thing I want is this motherfucker looking over his shoulder if he throws a pick or has a base. He's going to have ups and downs. That's just how it is. He's going to. He's never started in the NFL. To have Jimmy G sitting there on the bench, I mean, what's he going to be doing? Is he going to be in the headset? Is he going to be talking to him? Is he going to be helping him? Is he going to have his back turned to him? I mean, what's going on here? So I don't love it for that purpose, but Jimmy G is with the 49ers. All right. I was hoping he was going to go to this team who just named their starter, the Seattle Seahawks. They have named Geno Smith their starter. I like this. I like Geno Smith better than Drew Lock. I think that's going to be better for fantasy football, for DK Metcalf and for Tyler Lockett. What do you think about that?
I agree. I mean, we saw some super small sample size last year when Geno Smith kind of stepped in, and he had a couple drives there where it was like you're watching Geno Smith back in West Virginia days. It was like, holy shit, man, this guy is he really back? Is this, and then of course, then he fucked it up. And so, but then now he's getting the opportunity again. And so it was actually, in my opinion, man, I thought it was Drew Lock's job to lose, and he lost it that last preseason game. You can't throw 3 picks when you're in a tight competition like that. And now with Jimmy G kind of off the market officially, there's really not much else out there. I mean, Vikings just dropped Kellen Mond. That's not really relevant. I mean, there's nobody really else out there. And so for me, man, this is Geno Smith's team. Take the bull by the horns, man, and roll with it, because you have the team around you to be competitive. It's going to be interesting, though. I definitely think for Tyler Lockett, Geno or DK Metcalf and Noah Fant, I think that this is a better option than what would be a Drew Lock. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how this pans out, man.
Yeah, I like DK a lot better now with Geno Smith. I mean, Tyler Lockett, he was boomer bust before.
He's gonna be boomer bust. Yeah,
ultimate boom bust this time. So just know that when you're drafting Tyler Lockett. Best ball leagues, definitely draft Tyler Lockett. He's going to have those weeks for you that will help. But yeah, he's going to be super, super frustrating to have and to try to start. You're never going to know when to start him on your team. I mean, you're just not. It's going to be frustrating. All right, Najee Harris, last piece of news here. Najee Harris, this news kind of came out and we didn't really know about it. You know, he's been struggling for the past month with a sprained Liz Frank injury that he suffered during the first padded practice on August 1st. This injury typically takes 4 to 6 weeks to heal. So coming up right in week 1, that's 4 or 5 weeks, you know, so he's right in that range. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I also read an article this morning, you know, talking about the Steelers have to manage his usage. Last year, he was just completely utilized in every down. He got how many targets per game he was getting? I mean, it was ridiculous, crazy. His workload. They're going to have to manage that a lot better just to keep him healthy. So he could have a slower start this year based on his injury, based on them having to manage his workload. I think he's going to be a top 5 running back. I'm not worried about it. I think he's an absolute stud. But just be aware he could start off a little slower or maybe not play as much in the first week or two until he's completely healed up.
Johnny, for those drafting this weekend, right? Because right now we're gearing up. We're going to war. Most people are getting ready to go to war.
Yeah.
Does this change your outlook for Najee Harris, knowing, I mean, this is a serious injury. Like if it were to be torn, if something were to happen, it's a sprain, thank God. It's not to the level of what it could be. But if you're looking at Dalvin Cook, which you're obviously taking Dalvin Cook, especially you, I know you that, but you know, let's think a little bit further. What about an Aaron Jones? Let's think, maybe do you go receiver with a Devontae Adams at this point in time? Does this change your draft strategy when you're looking at maybe pick 7, 8, 9 to where it was golden? It was guaranteed. You're taking Najee Harris. If you didn't, you're a dumbass. But now this could be a lingering thing. And are you willing to bet your entire team on potentially Najee Harris? So does this change anything for you?
Yeah, it does a little bit. Yeah. If I'm drafting, so Najee Harris, you're looking at mid to the end of the first round is where you're staring at him. He's going to be right around. You're making decisions between Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook. I'm taking all 3 of those guys above Najee at this point. They're all healthy. They're all, you know, workhorses, going to get the load, good in PPR. I'm taking all of those guys currently over Najee Harris. Where it gets weird is the Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara conversation. I'm taking Najee over those guys. I am. The truth is that if I'm looking at that decision and Dalvin Cook's gone and I'm looking at Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, I'm probably taking the receiver. It's going to be a Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp, and if they're gone, it's probably a Devontae Adams and a Stephon Diggs. So that I just see more value there than I do with those top running backs. Yeah. So, yeah, it does. It pushes him down maybe a notch or two, but it's over very specific people that I would take over Najee Harris. All right, Frankie, in today's episode, let's get to it, man. Let's get to it, okay? We've got Trial by Combat, Frankie and Johnny's champions. So what we've done is we've gone through. Each of us have looked at a quarterback, running back, receiver, and a tight end. And we're planting our flags on one guy that we think is going to be our champion. We're going to root for this guy. We're going to be taking all the praises and the victory laps when these guys dominate. And if they don't, we're going to take the shit for them too. Because Frankie, trust me, every week when we do our ice and fire segments, I'm going to be looking, saying, okay, where's Frankie's champions? How did they do here? Because man, I want to give you some shit like I did with Joe Mixon last year.
I want to give you shit. Oh God,
fuck! I can't wait, man. Yeah. Yeah, but this is going to be fun. These are guys that we're going to be rooting for all year long. Let's lead this off with this, Frankie.
No, I'll get no justice here, so I will let the gods decide my fate. I demand a trial by combat.
Oh, I love all the dramatic looks. Just cut to me. I demand trial by combat. All right, Frankie. I challenge you to trial by combat, Frankie. Who is going to be your quarterback champion?
I sentence you to trial by combat.
So, who will it be?
So, who will it be?
I am William Wallace. And I select Matt Ryan. Guys, Matt Ryan is the quarterback that I am selecting. And again, we can take the easy route here, John. We can take the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen's, all those guys. That provides nothing to anybody because they're guaranteed, knock on wood. So I am going with Matt Ryan this year, John. For those of you who are just like, why the hell are you doing this? I'll give you a couple of reasons. One, his ADP is insane. He's undrafted. He's not being drafted currently. So, guys, if he's available, you can pick him up as a backup right now, stash him away, or keep him in mind for when somebody gets hurt on your team. That way you have a bench spot open. You don't want that bench spot to rot necessarily. But for me, I'm thinking about what Carson Wentz did last year. I'm thinking about the 27 touchdown passes, the 7 interceptions, the 3,500 plus yards on a team that should have been to the playoffs. And if Carson Wentz, a guy that to me isn't nearly at the level of what Matt Ryan is, can do that, what can Matt Ryan do? So guys, when I'm looking at Matt Ryan as well, every single year he has played, he's thrown for 4,000 yards, except for last year where he almost threw for 4,000 yards. Okay, so last year, John, he threw for 20 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions on a god-awful, terrible team. John, I'm really happy you pulled up this graphic. For those listening in, John pulled up this awesome graphic by Next Gen Stats, basically saying, hey, who were the top 10 deep passers of 2020 based on Next Gen Stats? Guys, 2021, excuse me. Thank you. Number 1 is Josh Allen. Number 2 is Matt Ryan. Number 2. Okay, his passing score in deep passes is a 99. That is above Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Matt Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, the back-to-back MVP. So, guys, now you're putting Matt Ryan on a team with Michael Pittman Jr., with Paris Campbell, who, by the way, is healthy for the first time since coming out of Ohio State. Okay, so we have a true speedster. You also have a phenomenal offensive line, a top 3 offensive line. You have a top 6 defense. And then on top of it, you have arguably a top 2 running back in the NFL this year, and Jonathan Taylor. Put all of those pieces around a guy who already was an MVP, went to a Super Bowl, and has the ability to work with a guy in Frank Wright. John, I am planting my sword and my flag with Matt Ryan this year as my champion quarterback.
Matt Ryan, will you be Frankie's champion?
I will be your champion.
I love you, Matt Ryan.
I want to see you make that Tyrion face of, yes. All right. Good champion, Frankie. We're going to be monitoring your love for Matt Ryan all season long. Let's get to my champion now. My champion, I am putting my money where my mouth is for sure this year. I target this guy everywhere I can. And let me tell you, I don't have amazing analysis on this. This is purely speculation and excitement. I want a shiny new toy. I don't want an old beat up car. I want a goddamn Ferrari that I can bring out of the garage, pull the cover off, and just speed that fucker down the road. I'm talking about Trey Lance. He is my champion at quarterback. I know he's a darling for everybody in fantasy, but you know what? I'm sorry. I'm not going to be contrarian. I'm taking Trey Lance. This is not a guarantee. Okay, he's going right now. His ADP is quarterback 12, so he's right at the end of being a quarterback 1. He's going at the end of the 8th round in ADP. Listen, 8th round, this is my auto draft pick. I've got stud running backs and receivers by this point. I typically don't take a tight end yet. So that's where I'm looking at. If he's there, I start playing that game. Who's got a quarterback? Who doesn't have a quarterback? How long can I wait for Trey Lance? It's going to be 8th round. If you can wait because the guy's around you, depending on where you are in the turn, and get him in the 9th, I like to play that game and try to get him in the 9th, just to steal a little bit of extra value in the 8th there. I love Trey Lance. His deep ball is absolutely just gorgeous. He's got great receiving options now with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. He's got good running backs out of the backfield, good young running backs out of the backfield. One thing that I like that he's really been bringing Brandon Ayuk back to life.
Yeah.
He didn't do shit last year, and he was kind of a fantasy darling going into drafts. Well, he's got a really good connection with Brandon Ayuk. They both were drafted in the same class. They both were on the practice squad together. They've got a lot of time together and a lot of rapport together. Word is that he and Deebo have had a little harder time connecting, but that's going to come. Deebo Samuel's an absolute stud. That's going to come. But the fact that he's got a great connection with Brandon Ayuk means more options in the passing offense. So let's just talk about, first of all, why he's a shiny sports car. It's his goddamn legs, man. This guy's going to run the ball like a goddamn freak. I think he passes better than Lamar, and he runs better than Kyler Murray. So this is what I'm looking at with a Trey Lance. I think it's super exciting. I'm planting my flag on him. I'm putting my sword right in there. He is my dude. Trey Lance, will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
Johnny, real quick, can you please, I want you to unsheath that fucking sword, dude, and start doing some crazy shit. Dude, can you give a backstory on the sword? This is a perfect, this is a perfect, like, segment and everything. Tell us, like, talk to us. What's the meaning behind the sword? What's with the sword? How did you get it?
Okay, the sword is an exact replica. This is how nerdy I am, okay? It's an exact replica of the Aragorn's sword from Lord of the Rings. It's Anduril, the Flame of the West. This is forged from the shards of Narsil. Everybody knows that. I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know. Yeah. But it's my sword, and yes, it's real. I can pull it out. I'm not going to do that on the podcast right now. I'm tempted, believe me. But we got to try to get this thing to about an hour and 15 minutes. But yes, I have a sword. I love swords. Okay.
Love it, man. Love it. And guys, for those of you who want to know, there are pictures out there. We have to find it. Johnny and our whole family is dressed up for the Lord of the Rings Halloween years ago. And
this is like 20 years ago. This was like in 2000 when the first movie came out. Yeah.
And the goatees and the hair. I mean, literally, our grandma was Bilbo Baggins.
It was perfect.
Okay? It was perfect. Amazing. So,
we went through and had casting. We said, okay, we need this person as my brother was Frodo because he had the stupid curly hair. I mean, we had his best friend was Samwise Gamgee because he looked just like him. You know,
my mom was Pippin.
Your mom was Pippin. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We had everybody picked out. We had handmade costumes. It was legit as hell, man. I mean, there were probably, I don't know, 15 of us or so that did it and dressed up. It was a blast, man. Yeah. This was like, circa 2000 or something. It was right after the first movie came out, Fellowship. Great time. Great time. All right, Frankie, let's get back to our champions. We've got your running back champion. Who is your running back champion this year?
So my running back champion this year, guys, is another one that's a little bit of a sleepy time sleeper. And I don't want to say, true sleeper, but he flirts with that line. It's going to be Ramondre Stevenson, John. I'm going to plant my sword, plant my flag with Ramondre Stevenson by my side. The reason being, guys, is because right now he's currently being drafted mid to end of 7th round. ADP is 92. The reason why I like him so much this year is for a few reasons. We saw flashes last year. We saw flashes as a rookie, what he could do. And remember, the reason why early on he did well, he fumbled, he got benched. Belichick wasn't about it. Then he gave him a second chance, and we really got to see the real Ramondre Stevenson. The other reason why I like him is because Damian Harris has injury history, and he is still banged up already in the preseason. There's also been rumors that there was potential trades going to potentially happen, things like that, which makes me think, okay, if those are floating around, John, there's some aspect of the truth there. Whether or not he gets traded, it means, though, that his workload might decrease a bit, increasing that of Ramondre Stevenson's. The other thing that he has proven this offseason is his pass catching capability. We've talked about it to no length's end. They need and miss a James White type of back and what Belichick likes. And so, yes, Ramondre Stevenson really wasn't looked at as that guy. Over this offseason, what he's proven is he can be that guy, can be a guy to where he can catch the ball when need be. For those of you viewing, you can see this awesome chart here. For the listeners, I'm going to describe this to you. It's the same chart, right, that we talked about with Devontae Adams in the past and a few others, where it shows that projected actual and average actual in terms of fantasy production on a week-by-week basis. Guys, this is from fantasypros.com. They do an awesome job with these types of graphics. But what you can see here is his his projected floated around that 8-point mark, okay, throughout the course of the season. For those of you listening, I'm trying to paint this picture. The actual line, okay, what he did on a week-by-week basis, you saw peaks of that more often than not. And so what this tells me is that was a rookie year and a very convoluted offense. You're still seeing his ability to spike. Also, those spikes were when Damian Harris was either hurt or played half the amount of time what he normally would. And so these spikes, guys, are around and over that 20-point mark. You're seeing things over double digits more times than not for a guy who got a lesser of a workload than most would have assumed. And so then when you're thinking about the average actual, guys, the average actual and his projected were right at the same mark, which shows me that this is dead on. So right about that 8-point mark, I believe in half PPR, John, he averaged 9 points as a rookie. I think that this is going to spike heavily into him averaging double-digit points. And for a guy that is averaging, think about this from a fantasy perspective, guys. From a running back that you can draft in the 7th round, who is averaging double-digit points in a half PPR, that is gold. That is value. That is somebody that is a trade bait asset. That is somebody that maybe even creeps into that RB2 status. And so for that reason, John, I'm taking Ramondre Stevenson with me. We're going to war, and I'm planting my sword with him along my side as my champion running back.
I love it, man. I love Ramondre Stevenson this year. One of the big reasons this graph right here shows you why I love him. This is a guy in the 7th round you can take that has huge upside potential. He had 2 weeks on here, and this is standard scoring by this graph. On this graph on here. He had 2 weeks over 20 points, in a week for you. You have a 7th round pick that gets you over 20 points, in a particular week. That's a guy that wins you that week. You're pairing him up already with your studs at this point. I love Ramondre Stevenson this year. It's a really nice champion. And if something does happen to Damian Harris,
gold.
He could be a top 10 back.
Alexander Madison.
Yeah, exactly. Love him, Frankie. Love that. All right, let's get to my running back champion. And I'm not going to lie, this one, I punished myself this year. None of us did very obvious choices. We're all taking these guys that are huge risks. And I think because we want to give each other shit all season long is what it is. Because half of these guys, they're probably going to take.
Yeah.
All right, well, here's a guy, my champion. Believe it or not, we gave this guy so much shit last year. We had an entire soundbite based on him. I'm going to continue wiping this year, Frankie. I'm going to wipe and I'm going to wipe, and I don't give a shit. It's not going to be poop this year. Saquon Barkley is my running back champion. We got a little picture up here. I love this graphic you got here, Frankie. This is a quote from Barry Sanders on Saquon Barkley on the screen. It says, being as young as he is, players bounce back from injury all the time. We saw that with Adrian Peterson just a few years ago. I have all the faith and confidence in Saquon. I'm going to tell you right now, I have all the faith and confidence in Saquon Barkley also. I think this is going to be his year, man. Last year, it was brutal. Last year was really tough. He was never really fully healthy last year. The entire team was in disarray. It was really just a throwaway season for me when it comes to Saquon Barkley. When it comes to the New York Giants, for that matter, it was really a throwaway season. This is a chart showing his projected versus actual fantasy points, just like we showed a second ago. This is for Saquon here. You had the one big boner week on there in week 4, but other than that, it was very pedestrian. I mean, he had a couple of decent weeks, but it was really low. His actual average was 8 points in a standard league. That's not good. This is Saquon Barkley. He was, what do we have here? Right now, he's a mid-second round, so I love getting him at the end or the middle of the second round, pairing him up with like a Justin Jefferson or a Cooper Kupp. Having him be your RB1, I like that in that scenario. Now, if I'm taking Saquon Barkley as my number 2 pick, I'm coming right back in round 3 with a running back. I don't give a shit. I don't care who's on the board. I'm coming back with a stud running back. And then in round 4, in that running back dead zone, that's where I take a receiver. I've got a couple in mind. My next champion will be on that list for sure. But that's kind of how I'm handling Saquon. It's a very specific strategy if I draft him, because this does not come without risk. Obviously, he could have the year he had last year. The Giants, they're going to struggle a bit this year as well. Their receivers are banged up, and you know, it's not looking good. But that's why I love Saquon. I think those vacated targets in the receiving room right now, and some of the health issues they're having with their receivers, I think Saquon's going to be the beneficiary of that. His PPR, his catching out of the backfield is superb. He's kind of a CMC light when it comes to that. Just looking at some stats here, I mean, he's 25 years old. It's his 5th year as a running back. In 2018, his rookie season, and this is what I think he's going to get back close to, he totaled 1,300 rushing yards, 91 catches. 91 catches.
That's insane.
For 700 yards, 15 touchdowns. That was obviously an incredible, insane year. He was the number 2 running back in fantasy football that season. I don't see him getting back to that. Those numbers are pretty, crazy. But I see Saquon Barkley where he's being drafted as a value. I see him next year being a first-round pick once again. I see him being in that top 7, 8 running backs. No question about it to me in my mind. Right now he's being drafted as the running back 11. I just think it's disrespect. I think people have been burned. I don't think it's based off of talent and opportunity. And as we know, those are the 2 big things in fantasy football that make somebody valuable. Saquon Barkley, you are my champion. All right, Frankie, let's get to wide receiver. Who is going to be your champion at wide receiver this year?
So, John, I'm taking another risk here. I'm all about the risk for my champions. And this is a guy, though, that, my Lord, does he come with insane upside. I'm going to go with Michael Thomas as my receiver here. So, guys, we have a awesome graphic up here, and it's basically saying a Saints receiver, Michael Thomas, is the NFL's top route runner. For those of you that can remember, you got to think back to 2017, 2018, 2019, right, where this guy dominated the NFL. There wasn't anybody remotely close to him. He broke the single season reception record, and it was absolutely incredible. Yes, he had Drew Brees, but here's what's interesting about Michael Thomas this year. John, from a fantasy perspective, he's being drafted currently at the end of the 5th round. Okay. He's overall ADP is 70. Okay, guys. So what that tells me is there is a massive opportunity for you to get a guy of this talent. By the way, of this talent, this is the individual that I'm talking about. Okay. He never had less than 1,000 yards receiving up until when he got hurt in 2020. Okay. He also had never had less than 90 yards catching, never had less than 90 yards 90 catches in a season. Jesus.
You okay, man? Is everything all right?
Stroking out a little bit.
Okay.
90 catches in a season up until 2020. Guys, what that tells me is before his injury And then 2021 was a shit show of a season, right? With continued injury, Sean Payton, all that stuff. Okay. This guy was a phenom at what he did. Now you bring in a brand new coach. Payton's gone. Now you bring in a guy that really helped get Mike Evans to where Mike Evans really was, and Jameis Winston, a guy that was okay throwing the ball up 50-50 balls down the field. That is where Mike Thomas is going to excel. On top of his ability to route run like nobody else, maybe close to Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, those top route runners, Michael Thomas is right up there. Now you pair him with an Alvin Kamara again. Now you have an Olave on the outside, and then you partner him with a Juice. He's not had a receiving core like this ever before, even with Drew Brees. It wasn't close. And so now you have these other core pieces that are going to take away some of that coverage into where maybe you can start seeing him excel. By the way, guys, everything out of camp, yeah, he had a couple hamstring soreness, things like that. Everything that I am seeing and reading is saying he looks like the old Michael Thomas. So bring that back to fantasy now. Again, you can get a guy like Michael Thomas in the 5th round, end of the 5th round, as your receiver 2, maybe your receiver flex, right? Somebody like that. It is a freaking steal. I am willing to take the risk, John. I'm willing to ride with you to the edge of the earth, into Mordor, for whatever the hell it costs, to be my receiver champion. John, I choose Michael Thomas.
You have chosen wisely. Man, did we take some shots and some risks here with Saquon Barkley and Michael Thomas? Jesus, man. We're just gluttons for punishment here, buddy.
We just want to get smacked around a bit.
I know. But you know what? How much of a genius are you going to look like if Michael Thomas blows up, ends up being a 2nd-round pick next year?
Crazy.
And you've been starting him in your flex all season long, just dominating.
Having the ability to potentially start him with a Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, right? Pairing him with an A.J. Brown. It'd be crazy if he does what he can do.
Absolutely, man. Love it. Great champion. Good luck with you on that one, man. That's going to be tough.
I'm going to need it.
I know you are. All right, let's get to my wide receiver champion. This guy I love. Again, not a slam dunk at all. I'm talking about Mike motherfucking Williams, receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. Listen, I'm starting this one off. This is very simple to me. I've got Justin Herbert as a candidate in my mind. I think he's top on the list to be MVP of the league this year. That's how talented Justin Herbert is. His number 1 receiver is Mike Williams. Mike Williams really came on the scene last year. Let's see here. 27 years old, signed a 3-year, $60 million extension in the offseason. Last year, he had 76 catches on 129 targets, 1,200 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That's what we've been expecting from Mike Thomas since he came into the league. What was it, 4 or 5 years ago? That's what we've been wanting. We've finally been able to see that.
From Mike Williams.
From Mike Williams, I'm sorry, yes. So 4th round ADP right now. Wide receiver 16. He was a wide receiver 12 last year, so he's not even getting the respect that he earned last year as the wide receiver 12. He's being drafted at 16. So I look at my champions. Who are guys that are going to outperform their ADP? Mike Williams is going to do it. With an MVP candidate like Justin Herbert throwing him the ball, he's, 6'4", 218 pounds, 50-50. He's a big receiver, man. 50-50 ball specialist. Throw that ball up and let him jump up and get it. Red zone target. I see him getting in double-digit touchdowns this year. I just see him being an absolute freak of nature. Bring him on. He's my champion, Mike Williams. I want you in that 4th round. He is my savior when you don't want to look at those running backs in that running back dead zone. I don't want to have to make that choice. I already want to have a stud receiver and 2 badass running backs, and then I come right back around and I bring Mike Williams on as my wide receiver 2, and I just dominate week in and week out. That's just what I do, Frankie. Yeah.
Love it.
Mike Williams, you're my champion, baby. All right, Frankie, let's get to the final champion. Let's get to our tight end champions. And these are some deep pools that we've got here. We're not talking about Darren Waller and Travis Kelce. We're talking about some deep ones. So, Frankie, I challenge you to trial by combat. Who is your champion?
I sentence you to trial by combat.
So, who will it be?
Who will it be, Frankie?
My champion tight end is going to be no one other than Dallas Goedert. The reason being, John, is Dallas Goedert last year was tight end 8, okay, which is really fantastic for where he was being drafted last year. This year, we're looking at him end of 5th, early 6th round. He's roughly 75th ADP. But last year, guys, I really like what he's been doing year after year. So you got to remember, Zach Ertz was there. He was splitting a lot of time with Zach Ertz. Once Zach Ertz left, and this was his first full year without Zach Ertz. Without Zach Ertz, he was able to have 830 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 56 receptions. What that means is he averaged 9.1 points a game in half PPR. So if you can almost get double digits from a guy that you can draft in the 6th round as a tight end 8, that is incredible. And I only see it building this year. John, I believe the year before in 2020, he had 500 and some yards. The year before that in 2019, it was 300 and some yards. So now you're starting to see this progression, right? There's an awesome graphic here that Johnny pulled up for those listening. You can see weeks as a top 6 fantasy tight end. Okay, so basically what this shows is, you know, how many points, et cetera, or excuse me, how many times they were a top 6 fantasy tight end here, and it shows Mark Andrews obviously being number 1, shows Travis Kelce being number 2, George Kittle number 3. Logan Thomas, I believe, is that number 4 there, and then we have Dallas Goedert tied with Dalton Schultz. Okay, guys. So again, this is how many times. So think about this. How many times a tight end was a top 6 fantasy tight end for that week. And so I just think he's going to continue to build. Okay. The reason being, John, is because now they added AJ Brown. You have another year with Jalen Hurts. Okay. You have Devonta Smith. So now there's other guys that are going to take away a lot of, you know, that attention that Dallas Goedert started getting towards the end of last year, to where he started becoming kind of a low-end Kittle, low-end Kelce-esque, of where people were keying on him. They were double teaming him. They were chipping him a lot from a linebacker perspective. Now you can't do that. Now you have a big brute with A.J. Brown. You have the speedster Devonta Smith in his 2nd year. You have Jalen Hurts, who's feeling much more comfortable in a Nick Sirianni offense. On top of it, their running back situation is really shitty, right? Miles Sanders hasn't been doing very well. He's been banged up and hurt. You have Kenneth Gainwell, who's done a pretty damn good job from a receiving perspective, but nothing really from rushing. Then you have Boston Scott, et cetera. So they need to rely on other guys to produce for them. And that is why, John, I'm choosing Dallas Goedert as my champion, especially at the value he can provide. I think he's going to crack the top 6 this year, even beat his ADP. Dallas Goedert, will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
I'm sorry. For those of you just listening, I'm just laughing at Frankie's face every time he does that. He always makes the same face Tyrion Lannister makes in that clip. So please watch the video on YouTube. It's really funny. All right. Well, Frankie, thank you for your tight end champion. Let me talk a little bit about my tight end champion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that graph back up, because where you were mistaken there, that name in the red that's right in the middle, right in front of Dallas Goedert, that's my tight end champion, Frankie, and that's Zach Ertz for the Arizona Cardinals. Zach Ertz is my champion at tight end, and to be truthful, I love Dallas Goedert too. These are the 2 tight ends that I'm targeting late in the draft. If I'm not going to step up and grab Kelsey in the first round, which is pretty rare that I do, or pay up for one of these other guys in maybe round 4 or 5, it's not likely that I do those things. What I like doing is waiting until round 8, 9, 10, looking at Dallas Goedert, looking at Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, I love. He came to Arizona last year, was traded to Arizona. It freed up Dallas Goedert. It freed up Zach Ertz. They're both extremely talented tight ends that were both sharing time. Zach Ertz blew it up last year. Absolutely blew it up last year with Arizona. Let me pull up his projected versus actual graph here so you can see on the screen. He had the one thing I love about Zach Ertz is his week to have those winning weeks. He had a week over 20 points. For a tight end, that's huge. I know you're used to that kind of stuff with Travis Kelce and all of that, but this is a guy you can get in 8th, 9th, 10th round in your draft to give you weeks like that. He overproduced his projection 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. So his actual average was right around 6 to 8 points. But that's not what you're looking for in a tight end. You're not going to get a tight end that's going to be double-digit points every single week. When you're drafting tight ends late, you want touchdown opportunity. Zach Ertz has that touchdown opportunity. And one of the main reasons being, for the first 6 weeks, we've got DeAndre Hopkins out. So that's going to increase the target share for Zach Ertz. And with Kyler Murray, fast-paced offense, I really think it gives him just a huge opportunity. He averaged last year 7.4 targets per game. For your tight end, that's fantastic. Fan-fucking-tastic. All about targets. When talent meets opportunity. If he's getting the targets, the points will come. Last year, he was the tight end 5. He was the tight end 5. This year he's being drafted as the tight end 10. So you tell me what situation is making his life so much worse. There isn't. His life is so much better this year. So I see him overperforming that draft capital for sure. Last year, 74 catches, 112 targets for 763 yards and 5 touchdowns. I see the touchdowns, absolute possibility for the touchdowns to go up this year, especially without Hopkins. But I think he's a stud. So please, Zach Ertz, talk to me, buddy. Will you be my champion?
I will be your champion.
Thank you, Mandalorian. Isn't it nice that the Mandalorian chose to be Tyrion Lannister's champion? Isn't that
awesome.
funny?
That is.
I love it, man. Well, that is our champions. Frankie, are you scared? Are you nervous about your champions?
I'm ready to go into battle, man. I'm ready to run through a brick wall. Grab your sword. Grab your sword. Let's grab my sword. Let's go.
Grab it off the wall and
I want to
fucking go, baby.
Yeah, I'm pumped, man. I'm so pumped. And I hope everybody listening, viewing is excited. Get ready for your mock draft, or not even a mock draft. Get ready for your real drafts, because you know what? You're also going to war. A lot of these leagues, John, there's big money on the table, right? So yeah, have fun, make it fun, make it exciting, but also you're going to war. So go to win. Listen to what we're telling you.
Drink a lot of water, drink some liquid IVs, be smart about it. You don't want to be that guy who's drafting wasted and you wake up the next morning and look at your team. Frankie's done that. I've seen it.
A lot.
It's definitely happened. Yeah, it's happened to me. I got so drunk one time at a drafting with my brother in Cleveland. This is, 15 years ago probably. I'm wearing my Browns jersey, number 34. I walk up to him. This is how drunk I was. It's embarrassing. And he brings it up all the time because it blew his mind. He couldn't believe it. I walk up to him and I just looked him dead in the eyes and I just poured a beer right over his head. All over his head, all over his hair. Bartender looks at me and he goes, 34, you're out of here. Kicks me out of the bar. My draft was terrible, man.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. Learn from young post-game Johnny's mistakes, okay? Johnny's older and wiser now, and he's telling you to be responsible, don't drink too much. Put serious thought into your draft. But you know what? Have a great time, guys. Get the food, get the drinks, do the live drafts. Have fun, man. Enjoy your drafts this weekend. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Please follow us on social media. Again, Instagram, Facebook, now YouTube at Frankly Fantasy Football. Please subscribe, smash that bell like the kids like to say. It'll give you notifications and let you know when there's new episodes out there. And you can send us messages on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. Frankie, I love you, brother. I can't wait to draft with you this weekend. We got a draft on Sunday. We got a 14-team double flex family draft on Sunday, live, baby. So we'll be having some pictures and we'll be sending out some social media and some, images of our draft board. You guys can critique us a little bit too. And then we've got an online super flex league on Monday we're drafting. So looking forward to that, definitely. All right, stay tuned. We're hopefully going to have a mock draft episode out for you later this week. One final mock right before you draft. And then next week, man, it is the week 1 preview. We get into our standard cadence. And man, I am so ready. I can't wait for meaningful football to start, man. Let's go. Let's go. Frankie, I love you. I'll talk to you next week, my friend.
Talk to you next week. See you on the other side.
See you on the other side, and thank you to our champions. May the fantasy gods smile upon you. Bye.